Merz will be, at the end of the day, chancellor in Germany. He needs a qualified majority in the first two rounds. In a second round, a simple majority, which he has, would be enough. So therefore, because of this type of voting, he will, at the end of the day, win this.
Merz has not been voted in by the parliament. This is as chancellor. This is the first time it's ever happened, I think, in post-war Germany. So let's speak to Times Radio's presenter Adam Bolton, who's with us now. Adam, morning to you.
Good morning.
This is a shock. I mean, I said it's never happened, I think, in post-war Germany. A chancellor has not been confirmed by the parliament. They go through an inordinate rigmarole of agreements to form a coalition. It must be pretty surprising that, having done all of that, they got to the vote and some people presumably just didn't want him.
Yeah, I think it will be seen as a sign of the instability, really, in Western democracies at the moment, and the failure to reach agreement. I mean, Germany has been failure for sort of consensus across the spectrum on the leadership of the country. And as you say, have a number of coalitions because of their proportional representation system. But what we've got now is, of course, the Alternative for Deutschland as an extreme right-wing party which gained a number of votes, which has just been prescribed officially as an extreme party in Germany. And I suspect that has part to play in the failure to make Friedrich Merz the Chancellor. That said, I think the likelihood is probably that they'll have a number of votes and he will emerge as the Chancellor. Certainly, I've just been at a briefing with a number of senior British and American and indeed foreign politicians, and the mood here was very optimistic. Oh, at last, Germany's getting back in the game. We're getting Friedrich Merz, a man who knows what he thinks, who will make Germany a player again in the running of the European Union and in relations in Europe with the UK. But obviously now that's back in the balance.
Well, let's bring in somebody who can give us a bit more of an insider take, if you like, on what is going on in Germany at the moment. Elmar Brok, who is a former member of the European Parliament, joins us on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Kate.
We were listening to Adam Bolton there explaining that there may well be an element of this which is to do with the decision to prescribe Alternative for Deutschland. What do you think is going on at the heart of this shock in the German Parliament?
No, first of all, we have to wait for the two next votes. I still believe that Merz will be, at the end of the day, chancellor in Germany. He needs a qualified majority in the first two rounds. In a second round, a simple majority, which he has, would be enough. So therefore, because of this type of voting, he will, at the end of the day, win this. But nevertheless, it's a loss of authority, of legitimation, if he has to go through such a procedure. So that would be not a good start, for sure. But we have to see whether that is a certain signal from certain parts of the coalition, leftists from the Social Democrats, people from the CDU, CSU, who did not become ministers, all that human things which happen in such a situation. And therefore, I hope it can be repaired in the course of the day.
And to be clear, I mean, you're talking about that process there. Merz needed 316 votes in the 630-seat Bundestag, but he only secured 310. That's what's happened. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about a shock at the moment. And you are saying, as Adam Bolton was suggesting, that he will end up being Chancellor. But it is that political instability. It's the question about what this means now for the new German Chancellor, as we expect him to be. Do you think it is a significant blow?
It's a significant blow, but in that rules for electing a chancellor is that he needs 316 votes in the two first rounds, not in the third round. And therefore, he has a majority of parliamentarians, but not the qualified majority overall votes. And here, I think, it's that procedural thing. There is no majority against him. Therefore, I'm still quite confident that he will make it to become chancellor, but it is not a very good start. It's a very bad start, to be clear.
Well, Elmar, many thanks for joining us so quickly after that shock decision there by the German Parliament. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. That's Elmar Brok, there, a former member of the European Parliament, saying, I mean, he probably will still end up as Chancellor, but it isn't a great start.
Yeah, Adam Bolton's still here. Adam, you made that point about the AfD. I think what's so interesting in European politics, and we can have a conversation about whether that leads to anything in this country, but there's going to be frustration among the electorate if they are consistently voting for right, far right, hard right parties. They do it in France, they do it in Germany, which never then seem to make it towards the political establishment. That seems to be a fundamental problem of democracy that Europe is facing, because you have it with Le Pen, where at the very end, everyone tends to gang together and puts forward a candidate, says, we'll be the anti-Le Pen candidate, we'll make sure Le Pen doesn't run France. In Germany, the coalition will keep out the AfD because they find a way of doing it so the AfD can be excluded and indeed proscribed. I wonder if that's storing up trouble, in your view, Adam, for a chunk of the electorate that wants to vote for these people.
Well, yes, it is, although it's important to remember that in almost all those cases, they are not the majority. Yes, there seems to be a surge towards populist parties on the right, but in the cases you mentioned, they haven't yet managed to form the majority. And of course, if they do get the majority, then they'll get into power, as we've seen in the United States, for example. So, yes, I think there's a sense of frustration. And yes, there is a sense of frustration which those parties play on to campaign, because, you know, one of their appeals is that we are the outsiders, we are on the side of the downtrodden, of the people who are not benefiting from the system as they see it. And of course, there's always that kind of Animal Farm moment when they move from being ostensibly on the side of the oppressed to becoming the oppressors if they get into power.
And that's the question, I suppose, for reform in this country, isn't it? That we've just seen these local elections. The question, I suppose, for reform is, can they retain the freedom of the outsider, where they're never responsible for anything, even if they're now responsible for a few councils? When it comes to big issues, they can still present themselves, Farage can present himself as the sort of Trumpian outsider. All of this stuff that goes on, all of the lack of answers on immigration, it's all their fault. Don't worry, I'll bring common sense back to politics. That's the message that he'll want to trade on for the next 3 years.
Yes, indeed. And of course, if they fail to deliver, they can always say we can't deliver because the system is so biased against us. Therefore, you've got to go on voting for us in greater numbers so that we prevail. I mean, to give you an example, we've had these early statements from the Merz, reform mayors who've been elected last week, saying we're going to limit the type of flags that can be flown from council buildings, whether only the Union Jack and the flag of St. George. We've heard them saying we're going to end the dumping of asylum seekers in our constituencies. Now, they may well not be able to enforce either of those rules, but if they don't, you can be pretty sure that they'll say that's because the system is still against them and they need more power granted to them.
Meanwhile, Labour has to make a decision whether it tilts right to meet the challenge of reform, or left to meet the challenge of the Lib Dems and the Greens.